a little bit of water, cerulean blue, ultramarine blue, lots of white. Clean, dry brush, a big dot of white on there, straight onto the canvas. Going to clean and dry that brush again. Cad red, lots of white, a touch of cad yellow. This is still wet, so I'm going to blend those colours in and have a nice little gradient going on. When you're working down here, don't take the brush straight up there. You want to work your way up slowly to create the gradient. And then once you're all the way up here, it's the same thing. You don't want to bring the brush straight down here. You want to just slowly bring it down. Let the two colours meet really subtly. A little bit of water again. Now dry that brush. Base colour for the water. I'm going to go with ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, touch of burnt umber, white. I'm going to clean and dry that brush. Same thing as before, while that paint is still wet, I'm going to take a dot of white and I'm going to introduce that to the foreground. Some more white. Now that that's dry, I'm going to put another layer here. I'm going to go slightly darker, so I've washed and dried my brush. That's a lie, I've washed my brush, I haven't dried it. I've still got this mix that we used before. I'm just going to add to it with some ultramarine blue and some burnt umber. Cadmium red, ultramarine blue, white. I'm going to pop a little cloud in here, just above the mountains. If you feel it's too dry, just add a touch of water. I've added just a touch of white to that mix, and where that cloud meets the mountain, I'm going to just lighten it up ever so slightly. I'm going to take care of these distant mountains, and I'm going to do that with some ultramarine blue, burnt umber, some white, and that will do for now, I think. Now to put the base colour in for this distant land. It sits just in front of the mountains, and I'm going to do that with some ultramarine blue, sap green, burnt umber, while that background's drying, I'm going to put some work into the foreground. I've got some beautiful light reflections and landscape reflections. It's Clatteringshaws Loch, by the way, I don't think I've said that. Anyway, let's see if we can start sketching in some details here into the water. Back to the background, I'm going to give those base colours another layer. This bit of land first, so the sap green mix again, with some ultramarine blue, and a touch of burnt umber. I'm going to make a slight tweak to the colour that I used for the distant mountains. The colour is still on my palette, and what I'm going to do with it is add a big chunk of ultramarine blue and some white. We could just give that a little try. Yeah, we could do with a little bit of burnt umber in there. I'm going to let that background dry for a little bit while I put some more work into the foreground. So I'm going to take care of the darker reflections in the water. You already know what colour I'm going to mix up here though. Ultramarine blue and burnt umber. I've got myself a little flathead. I'm going to deal with some of the lighter reflections now in the water. And I'm going to do that with ultramarine blue, white. I might add a touch of cerulean blue in there as well. And some more white. I want a bit of a dry brush going on here, so I might just take some excess off the brush. I'm going to add a touch more white to that mix. I've washed and dried my brush, and I'm going to mix up a darker blue now to take care of the slightly darker reflections. And I'm going to do that with some ultramarine blue and the tiniest little touch of burnt umber. Now I've switched to a smaller brush and I'm going to mix up the lighter colour that I was working with earlier. So that was just some cerulean blue, ultramarine blue and lots of white. I'm just going to see if I can tidy up some of the lines with this smaller brush. I'm just giving these beautiful dark reflections another layer, and I'm doing that with a mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt umber. Just bringing you in really closely to see these details again. I'm still working with the same brush, little small brush that I was using just up here a second ago, and the same colour, the ultramarine blue burnt umber mix. And I'm just creating these linear marks. taking care of these distant reflections. I felt it was important to pull you in a little bit closer to see those details. I've learned from the previous painting that to keep the camera at the distance it's at currently means that you do miss out on those smaller details, and that just seems like such a waste. So I'll try and do a mixture of close up and further away, and hopefully I can get a nice balance between the two, and it won't be too unpleasant to watch if the camera gets a little bit shaky in some sections. There's some really nice things happening in this cloud, and it contributes to the light that's going to be reflecting in the water. So I'm going to take care of that first so that I kind of know what I'm doing down in this section here. So the first thing that I'm going to take care of is a shadow along the top of the cloud. So it's a slightly darker purple. I'm going to use a small brush with some ultramarine blue, some cad red, a touch of white, that's me taking the excess off the brush because I want this to be quite a subtle change in colour. We'll see how we got on with that. What we've got is an area of really strong light just in between the cloud as it breaks and just above the cloud. Now I'm going to do that with some yellow ochre, tiniest little bit I've got here, and a lot of white. Might add a touch of cad yellow in there. I'm going to take you in closer here. Now there's some little breaks in this cloud, so I'm going to try and describe that as best as I can. Now that light that we've just created, of course, reflects into the water. So we're going to try and describe that just now. Now it's the same colour and it's the same brush. I'm going to do some strategic blending, and I'm going to mix up some light blue into that beautiful bright yellow ochre mix that I've just made. So I'm going to add a touch of cerulean blue into that, ultramarine blue, and a good bit of white. There's some gorgeous pink colours happening in these reflections, so, and they're really subtle. I'm actually struggling to tell whether they're pink or kind of real light orange, so I'm going to try and describe that with some colour. And I'm going to start with cadmium red, cad yellow, I'm going to add a bunch of white to that just to see what that's looking like. Now I'm going to take all of the excess paint off the brush. I almost want to dry brush this colour in. So let's try it out with some beautiful lines up here first. Okay, I'm having to speed the process up a little bit because my SD card's full and I actually don't have anywhere to offload that, so I'm not sure if you're even going to see this one through to the end. So I've mixed up a colour here, sap green, burnt umber, cerulean blue, white and a touch of yellow ochre, and I'm just picking out some little details in this distant land. Just taking care of some of the shadows in that distant land with some ultramarine blue, burnt umber and a little touch of sap green. I'm going to pick out just some little trees there in the distance. I'm just doing the same with these distant mountains now. I'm picking out some light and shade just to give them a little bit more detail and definition. So I'm doing that with some ultramarine blue and titanium white paint. Just some shadows now, so ultramarine blue, burnt umber and a touch of white. I don't want it to be as dark as what's happening in the foreground of this painting, just a little bit more definition. Taking care of some of the darker reflections over on the right hand side with some ultramarine blue and a little touch of burnt umber, not too much, and some white. I've mixed up a light blue mix and I did that with some ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, white, and I added a touch of cad red in that just to highlight the beautiful kind of pink that's going to be reflected in the water from the sky. Now again, I don't have a lot of time left to video this for you, so I'm really aware that I'm missing out a lot of colour mixing, which is annoying. As annoying for me as it might be for you. I do apologise. My priority is now getting it finished rather than showing off all the individual marks. I've mixed up a really pretty baby pink colour with some cadmium red and white. I'm just using a little brush to apply that around some of the darker reflections in the water. I've got some real thick white paint on my brush. I added a little touch of cadmium yellow to it, and I'm just picking out some of the sparkles in the water. So the very last thing that I'm going to do here is take care of these tiny little dark reflections in the distant background, and I'm doing that with this small brush and with some ultramarine blue and burnt umber mixed together. So I'll show you a little bit of that and then I'll come back to you with the finished painting.